Jennifer Hayes froze mid-step, her heart skipping several beats as her gaze locked onto a familiar profile across the crowded restaurant. There, sitting at a corner table surrounded by well-dressed associates, was a face she hadn't seen in 12 years but would recognize anywhere. Jackson Bennett, her first love, the boy who had promised her the world, then vanished without a trace during their senior year of high school. She clutched her serving tray tighter against her chest, suddenly grateful for the dim lighting that kept her partially hidden among the restaurant's elegant shadows. "Jen, table 7 needs their order taken," called Marcia, the floor manager, snapping Jennifer back to reality. "And Mr. Peterson said the investors at table 12 need the special treatment. Apparently, some big-shot CEO is among them." "Right, sorry," Jennifer mumbled, adjusting her uniform and tucking a stray strand of auburn hair behind her ear. At 32, she hadn't imagined she'd still be waiting tables at Peterson's, one of Philadelphia's upscale restaurants. But life had thrown her a series of curveballs, and after her mother's cancer diagnosis 2 years ago, she had put her own dreams of opening a bakery on hold to help with the mounting medical bills. She took a deep breath and headed toward table 7, purposely taking the long route to avoid passing by Jackson's table. As she scribbled down a young couple's anniversary dinner order, her mind raced back to that summer after junior year, when she and Jackson had been inseparable. The way he'd kiss her under the old oak tree by the lake, his ambitious dreams of becoming an architect, the promise rings they'd exchanged, vowing to attend the same college, and then his mysterious disappearance that left her heartbroken and confused for years. "Miss, could we also get a bottle of your Cabernet?" The man's voice pulled Jennifer back to the present. "Of course, excellent choice," she replied with her practiced server smile, completing their order before reluctantly making her way toward table 12. As she approached, her palms grew sweaty. Jackson sat with his back to her, his once shaggy brown hair now expertly trimmed, his shoulders broader under an obviously expensive suit. The table fell silent as she approached, and Mr. Peterson himself appeared, placing a proprietary hand on Jennifer's shoulder. "Jennifer will be taking special care of your table tonight, gentlemen," Peterson announced proudly. "She's our finest server." Jennifer's cheeks flushed as 6 pairs of eyes turned to her, all except Jackson's. He seemed absorbed in studying the wine list. "We'll start with your finest champagne," said an older gentleman with silver hair. "We're celebrating a major acquisition today." "Of course, sir," Jennifer replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Would you like to hear about our chef's specials this evening?" As she recited the menu from memory, she felt someone's gaze intensify. Slowly, Jackson turned in his chair, his eyes lifting to meet hers for the first time. For a moment, the bustling restaurant seemed to fall away, leaving just the two of them suspended in time. A flicker of something, recognition, shock, passed across his face before it settled into a polite, impersonal smile. "That sounds excellent," he said smoothly, his voice deeper than she remembered, but unmistakably his. "We'll trust your recommendations." He didn't recognize her. Or worse, he did and didn't care. Jennifer nodded professionally, collected the menus and retreated to the kitchen, her hands trembling slightly. How could he not remember her, or was he just pretending for the sake of his colleagues? "You okay?" asked Marcia, noticing Jennifer's pallor as she punched in the order. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that," Jennifer muttered. Through the kitchen's round window, she could see Jackson laughing with his associates, looking every inch the successful businessman. What had happened to the boy who sketched buildings on napkins and talked about creating homes for people in need? The kitchen was a flurry of activity, chefs calling orders and line cooks moving with practiced precision. Jennifer leaned against the cool steel counter, trying to compose herself. This was ridiculous. It had been 12 years. Whatever they had shared as teenagers was long gone, buried under the weight of adult responsibilities and the passage of time. "Order up for table 9, the head chef called, sliding plates onto the pass. Jennifer forced herself back into professional mode, delivering the meals to a family celebrating a graduation before returning to check on Jackson's table. "How is everything this evening, gentlemen?" she asked, refilling water glasses and avoiding direct eye contact with Jackson. "Exceptional," the silver-haired man responded. "Bennett, you were right about this place." Jackson nodded, taking a sip of his wine. Peterson's has always had a special significance to me. Jennifer nearly dropped the water pitcher. Was that a hint that he remembered? That he knew exactly who she was? More bread, please, another executive requested, and Jennifer was grateful for the distraction. As she hurried back to the kitchen, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the polished surface of a serving tray. She hardly recognized herself sometimes. The confident, ambitious girl, who once had a scholarship to culinary school, now replaced by a woman with perpetual worry lines etched between her brows. Her mother's illness had changed everything, forcing her to drop out and take whatever work she could find. Peterson's had been a lifeline with its decent pay and flexible hours that allowed her to coordinate her mother's care. Throughout the evening, Jennifer maintained her composure as she served Jackson's table. Not once did he give any indication that he knew her, though occasionally she caught him watching her with a curious expression when he thought she wasn't looking. By the time she brought their desserts, she had convinced herself that he truly didn't recognize her. 12 years was a long time, and she had changed too. Her once long hair now fell in a practical bob, and the carefree girl she'd been had been replaced by a woman weathered by responsibility and sacrifice. The group lingered over coffee and cognac, discussing business matters in hushed tones. Jennifer moved efficiently around them, invisible yet essential, the way servers often were to the wealthy. She overheard fragments of conversation, something about a revolutionary housing project, sustainable materials, and a major investment opportunity. "Your vision could transform urban living," one man said to Jackson, "not just for the elite, but for everyone." Jackson's response surprised her. That's always been the point. Architecture isn't just about designing beautiful buildings, it's about creating spaces where people can thrive, regardless of their means. It sounded like the Jackson she had known, the idealistic boy with big dreams about changing the world through design. Perhaps some part of him had remained true to that vision after all. As the night progressed, the restaurant gradually emptied. Mr. Peterson personally escorted some VIP guests to the door, while Marcia began the closing procedures. Jennifer's feet ached from the long shift, but Jackson's table showed no signs of leaving. Finally, as the clock neared midnight, the men gathered their things. The silver-haired man pulled out a company credit card and handed it to Jennifer. "Charge it all to Bennett Architectural Innovations," he said, "and add a generous gratuity for your excellent service." Jennifer's fingers trembled slightly as she processed the payment, the company name confirming what she had begun to suspect. Jackson had not only achieved his dream of becoming an architect, but had built an empire around it. As she returned with the receipt, the executives began filing out, thanking her as they passed. Jackson lingered, adjusting his tie and checking his phone. When they were momentarily alone, he looked up at her, his eyes intent. "You haven't changed as much as you think, Jennifer Hayes," he said quietly. Her breath caught. "So you do remember me. I recognized you the moment I walked in," he admitted, his voice low. "I just wasn't sure if you'd want to acknowledge our history." Before she could formulate a response, he reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a business card, placing it on the table. "I'm in Philadelphia for the next 2 weeks. We should talk." "About what, exactly?" Jennifer asked, finding her voice. "It's been 12 years, Jackson. You disappeared without a word." A shadow crossed his face. "I know, and I owe you an explanation. More than one, actually." He glanced at his watch. "But not here. Not now." "Tomorrow 2 p.m. at my office. The address is on the card." Jennifer didn't reach for it. "I have responsibilities. My mother—" "I know about your mother," he interrupted, surprising her, "and about the bakery you never opened. I know a lot more than you might think, Jen." The familiar use of her nickname sent an unexpected shiver through her. How did he know about her mother, about her dreams? Had he been keeping tabs on her all these years? "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., he repeated, sliding the card closer to her. "What I have to tell you, it could change everything." With that cryptic statement, he turned and walked away, leaving her staring after him. After a moment's hesitation, she picked up the card, examining the embossed lettering. Jackson Bennett, CEO, Bennett Architectural Innovations. Turning it over, she found a handwritten note. Some promises take longer to keep than others. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she slipped the card into her pocket. What could he possibly mean? What promises was he referring to? And why now? after all this time. As Jennifer finished closing duties, her mind spun with questions and possibilities. Why had Jackson Bennett, now apparently a billionaire architect, returned to her life? And why did it matter so much that she was already mentally rearranging tomorrow's schedule to make that 2 p.m. meeting? Jennifer stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror the next morning, dark circles betraying her sleepless night. Jackson Bennett's business card lay on the counter beside her, its embossed lettering catching the morning light. She had read the mysterious note on its back at least 20 times. Some promises take longer to keep than others. "You don't owe him anything," she told her reflection firmly, trying to convince herself. But curiosity tugged at her relentlessly. Why had he disappeared? Why was he back now? And how did he know about her mother's illness and her abandoned bakery dreams? The sound of coughing from down the hall pulled Jennifer from her thoughts. She hurried to her mother's bedroom, where Diane Hayes was struggling to sit up in bed. "Morning, sweetheart," Diane said weakly, attempting a smile. At 58, the once vibrant former schoolteacher now appeared frail and diminished, her body ravaged by aggressive cancer treatments that had slowed but not stopped the disease's progression. "How are you feeling today, Mom?" Jennifer asked, adjusting pillows and checking the medication schedule taped to the nightstand. "Better than yesterday," Diane replied with characteristic optimism that Jennifer had always admired. "Katie called. She can't make it until 4 today." Jennifer bit her lip. Katie was the part-time caregiver who came while Jennifer worked. "That's going to be a problem. I have an appointment at 2. "A job interview?" Diane asked hopefully. "You know I've been telling you to look for something that uses your culinary training." Jennifer hesitated. "No, not exactly. I ran into someone last night, someone from the past." Diane's eyes, still sharp despite her illness, searched Jennifer's face. "Jackson Bennett," she stated rather than asked. Jennifer stared at her mother in shock. "How did you—" "Oh, honey, I may be sick, but I still read the local business section," Diane said with a hint of her old humor. "His picture was in the paper last month, something about an innovative, affordable housing project. I knew he was back in Philadelphia." "You didn't think to mention this to me?" Jennifer asked, incredulous. Diane reached for her daughter's hand. "What good would it have done? You spent years trying to get over that boy." Jennifer sank onto the edge of the bed. "He wants to meet today. Says he has something important to tell me. After 12 years of silence." Diane's tone sharpened. "That boy broke your heart, Jennifer. You were depressed for months after he disappeared. You stopped baking, stopped everything you loved." "I was 17, Mom. Everyone has a broken heart in high school," Jennifer said dismissively, though they both knew it had been more than that. Jackson's unexplained vanishing act had shattered her in ways that had taken years to repair. "What does he want now?" Diane asked, concern evident in her voice. "I don't know, but I think I need to find out," Jennifer admitted. "For closure, if nothing else." Diane squeezed her daughter's hand. "Just be careful. Rich men with guilty consciences can be dangerous." Jennifer spent the morning preparing meals for her mother, calling to reschedule Katie's arrival and trying not to obsess over her upcoming meeting. At 1:15 p.m., she stood before her closet, frustrated by her limited options. Nothing seemed appropriate for meeting a billionaire ex-boyfriend. She eventually settled on a simple navy dress, the one she wore to job interviews, and a pair of modest heels. Bennett Architectural Innovations occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming downtown skyscraper. Jennifer's stomach knotted as the elevator ascended to the 48th floor. The doors opened to reveal a stunning reception area with soaring ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows, offering panoramic views of the Philadelphia skyline. The space perfectly balanced modern elegance with inviting warmth, exactly the aesthetic Jackson had always admired. "May I help you?" asked a polished receptionist seated behind a sleek desk. "I'm Jennifer Hayes. I have a 2 o'clock appointment with Mr. Bennett," she said, the formal name feeling strange on her tongue. "Of course, Ms. Hayes. Mr. Bennett is expecting you," the receptionist replied, offering no hint of surprise or curiosity. "Please follow me." Jennifer was led through an open workspace where architects and designers collaborated at drawing tables and computer stations. The walls displayed impressive renderings of buildings and communities, many bearing awards and recognition plaques. Bennett Architectural Innovations was clearly at the forefront of the industry. The receptionist stopped before a set of glass doors etched with the company logo. "Mr. Bennett will be with you shortly," she said, gesturing Jennifer into a spacious office before quietly withdrawing. Alone, Jennifer took in the space that screamed success and power. A massive desk fashioned from reclaimed wood dominated one side of the room, while a seating area with comfortable leather chairs occupied another. But what caught her attention were the framed sketches on the walls, hand-drawn designs on what looked like napkins and scraps of paper. She moved closer to examine one and gasped softly. In the corner, in familiar handwriting, was a date and 2 sets of initials, JB and JH. "You inspired that one," Jackson's voice came from behind her. Jennifer turned to find him standing in the doorway, more casually dressed than the previous night in dark jeans and a button-down shirt, looking less like a corporate titan and more like the boy she'd known. "You kept my napkin sketches?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I kept everything, Jen," he replied simply, closing the door and moving further into the room. "Please, sit down." They settled in the seating area, an awkward silence stretching between them. Up close, Jennifer could see the subtle changes time had wrought. Fine lines around his eyes, a small scar near his right eyebrow that hadn't been there before, a certain wariness behind his confident demeanor. "Thank you for coming," Jackson finally said. "I wasn't sure you would." "Curiosity can be a powerful motivator," Jennifer replied, "especially when someone who vanished from your life suddenly reappears and claims to have been keeping tabs on you." Jackson winced at her directness. "I deserve that, and much worse." "Why did you leave, Jackson?" The question that had haunted her for 12 years finally spilled out. "One day we were planning our future, and the next you were just gone. No goodbye, no explanation. Your parents would only say you'd transferred to a school out of state." Jackson stood and walked to the window, his back to her. "My father gave me an ultimatum," he said, after a long pause. "End things with you or be cut off completely. No college fund, no connections, nothing." Jennifer stared at his back in disbelief. "Because of me? But your parents always seemed to like me." "They did, but they had different plans for my future." He turned to face her, his expression grim. "The day before I disappeared, my father received an offer from his oldest friend, Harold Crawford. You remember him?" Jennifer nodded. The Crawfords were one of Philadelphia's wealthiest families, with generations of influence in real estate development. Their daughter, Heather, had been in their class, pretty, popular, and perpetually disinterested in academics. My father and Harold had arranged for Heather and me to date in college, with an understanding that it would eventually lead to marriage, merging the Bennett and Crawford fortunes and connections. His mouth twisted bitterly. "Her business arrangement disguised as fatherly concern. And you just agreed without even telling me?" Jennifer couldn't keep the hurt from her voice. "No," Jackson said firmly. "I refused. Told him I loved you, that we had plans. That's when he threatened to disown me completely, but I still wouldn't budge." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made Jennifer's heart ache. "Then he threatened you." "Me?" Jennifer whispered. "Your culinary school scholarship. Your mother's teaching position. He made it very clear that if I didn't comply, he would ensure you lost everything." Jackson's eyes held a pain that looked fresh, even after 12 years. "My father was on the board of trustees at both institutions. He had the influence to do exactly what he threatened." Jennifer felt the blood drain from her face. "So you left to protect me?" "I was shipped off to a boarding school in Switzerland the next day. No phone, no internet access, no way to contact you. My father controlled everything." His voice hardened. "When I tried to write to you, my letters were intercepted. When I attempted to call from a classmate's phone, my father had your number changed." Jennifer's mind raced, pieces falling into place. Her inexplicably revoked scholarship that had been mysteriously reinstated months after Jackson's disappearance. Her mother's surprise promotion around the same time. "I thought I was being punished," she said quietly. "For months I wondered what I'd done wrong, why I wasn't good enough." Jackson moved to kneel before her chair, not touching her but close enough that she could see the regret etched deeply in his features. "You were everything, Jennifer. You were the reason I fought my way out from under my father's control. Every building I've designed, every company I've built, it was all to gain enough power that he could never threaten either of us again." 12 years, Jackson," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "You could have found a way to let me know once you were free of him. By the time I had established myself, 5 years had passed. I looked you up, saw you were engaged." His face clouded. "To Ryan Walsh. I thought you had moved on, found happiness. I didn't want to disrupt your life." Jennifer flinched at the mention of her ex-fiancé. "Ryan and I broke up 3 years ago." "I know," Jackson admitted. "I've kept track of you, Jen. Not in a stalker way," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "But I needed to know you were okay. When I heard about your mother's diagnosis, about you giving up your bakery dreams to care for her, I wanted to help. But I didn't know how to re-enter your life without seeming like a billionaire swooping in to save the day," Jennifer suggested, a hint of bitterness in her voice. "Something like that," he acknowledged, with a rueful smile. "So why now?" Jennifer asked. "Why reach out after all this time?" Jackson returned to his seat, leaning forward with an intensity that reminded her of the passionate boy she had known. "2 reasons. First, my father died last month." "I am sorry," Jennifer said automatically, though from Jackson's expression she gathered their relationship had never healed. "Don't be. His death freed me from the last of his influence. But more importantly, it led me to discover something." Jackson reached for a folder on the coffee table. "Have you ever wondered why Peterson's restaurant never seems to struggle, even when other restaurants in the area close?" Jennifer frowned, confused by the change of subject. "Mr. Peterson is a good businessman. He treats his staff well, maintains high standards." "True, but there's something else." Jackson handed her the folder. "Peterson's has had a silent investor since 1993, someone who provided capital with minimal return expectations, who helped the restaurant weather economic downturns without ever taking credit." Jennifer opened the folder to find legal documents for Peterson's restaurant, with a name highlighted in yellow, Diane Hayes, her mother. "That's impossible," Jennifer whispered. "My mother was a teacher. She never had that kind of money." "She didn't," Jackson agreed. "The money came from my grandfather, my mother's father. He set it up in your mother's name before he died. My father kept it hidden from me until recently. It seems our families have been connected for longer than either of us knew." Jennifer struggled to process this revelation. "But why would your grandfather invest in Peterson's, and why use my mother's name?" Jackson took a deep breath. "Because Peterson's was where my grandfather first met your grandmother, Rose, and where years later my mother first met your father." Jennifer stared at him, pieces of a puzzle she never knew existed slowly clicking into place. "What are you saying, Jackson?" "Our parents were step-siblings, Jennifer. My mother and your father grew up together after my grandfather married your grandmother, Rose. They weren't related by blood, but they were family." Jackson's eyes held hers steadily. "And my father hated the connection to your family, which he considered beneath us socially. That's why he was so determined to separate us, not just to secure a business alliance with the Crawfords, but to sever the last tie between the families." Jennifer felt dizzy with the implications. "Does my mother know about this?" "I don't know," Jackson admitted, "but there's more. When my father died, I discovered that your mother's name is on several other investments, all profitable, all managed by my father's firm, presumably as some twisted form of conscience, including," he paused, "a trust specifically designated for a bakery business." Jennifer's heart pounded. "A bakery?" "A considerable sum, Jen, legally yours to claim. Enough to open that bakery you always dreamed about, and to provide for your mother's care at the best medical facilities in the country." Jackson leaned forward. "I came back to make things right, to give you what should have been yours all along. And," he hesitated, vulnerability flashing across his face, "to see if there was any chance that we—" A sharp knock interrupted him. The receptionist poked her head in. "I'm sorry, Mr. Bennett, but your 3 o'clock is here." "The investors from Singapore," Jackson nodded, clearly frustrated by the timing. "Tell them I'll be with them shortly." After the receptionist withdrew, he turned back to Jennifer. "I have to take this meeting. It's been scheduled for months. But we're not finished talking. Please, can we continue this conversation over dinner tonight?" Jennifer clutched the folder containing revelations that threatened to overturn everything she had believed about her life. "I need time, Jackson. To process all of this. To talk to my mother." Understanding crossed his face. "Of course, take all the time you need." He scribbled something on a notepad and tore off the page. "This is my personal number. Call me when you're ready to talk again." As Jennifer rose to leave, still reeling from everything she'd learned, Jackson gently touched her arm. Just know that whatever you decide about the money, about your mother's investments, it doesn't change what I came back to tell you. I never stopped loving you, Jennifer Hayes. Not for a single day in 12 years. Jennifer sat across from her mother at their small kitchen table, the folder Jackson had given her spread open between them. Diane's hands trembled slightly as she examined the documents, her face a complex mixture of emotions. "Mom," Jennifer prompted gently, "did you know about any of this? The connection to the Bennetts, the investments?" Diane closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they held a resignation that told Jennifer the truth before she even spoke. "I knew some of it," Diane admitted quietly. "Not about Peterson's or these other investments. But yes, I knew that your father and Jackson's mother grew up together as step-siblings." "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Jennifer asked, trying to keep accusation from her voice. "Even when Jackson and I were dating in high school?" Diane reached for her tea, buying time. "Your father made me promise never to speak of it. The falling out between him and the Bennetts happened long before you were born. When you came home talking about a boy named Jackson Bennett, I almost told you then, but—" She trailed off. "But what?" "You were so happy, sweetheart, and I thought perhaps it was a sign that the past could be healed." Diane's eyes filled with tears. "Then Jackson disappeared, and you were so heartbroken. I suspected Gerald Bennett had something to do with it, but I had no proof." Jennifer leaned back in her chair, absorbing this revelation. "So you knew Jackson's father was capable of separating us, and you still didn't tell me the truth." "I was trying to protect you," Diane said, reaching for Jennifer's hand. "Gerald Bennett was a powerful, vindictive man. Your father stood up to him once, and it cost him everything. I couldn't bear to see you hurt any worse than you already were." Jennifer withdrew her hand. "So instead you let me spend 12 years blaming myself, thinking I wasn't enough to make Jackson stay." "I'm sorry, Jennifer. Perhaps I made the wrong choice." Diane looked down at the documents again. "But these investments, I had no idea Rose had arranged anything like this through Michael Bennett." "Rose was your mother-in-law, right? Dad's stepmom," Jennifer clarified, trying to untangle the complicated family connections. Diane nodded. "Rose loved your father like her own son. When Gerald tried to cut all ties with your dad after he married me, a teacher with no social standing, Rose must have set these investments up as a way to ensure we'd be taken care of." Jennifer processed this information, a new question forming. But if Rose was on our side, and Jackson's grandfather was too, why did Jackson's father hate our family so much? Diane sighed heavily, looking suddenly older. "Because your father chose me over the life Gerald had planned for him. The Bennetts and the Crawfords have been business allies for generations. Gerald had arranged for your father to marry into the Crawford family, just as he later tried to do with Jackson." "Dad was supposed to marry a Crawford too?" Jennifer asked, shocked. "Heather Crawford's aunt, Patricia. Your father refused, left the family business, and married me instead." Diane's smile was bittersweet. Gerald never forgave him for choosing love over duty to the family. The parallels to Jackson's story were unmistakable. History had nearly repeated itself, except Jackson had been forced to make a different choice than her father had. "There's something else you should know," Diane said hesitantly. "The reason I never pushed you to pursue Jackson after he left. Your father made a similar choice to what Jackson apparently did." "What do you mean?" "Before we married, your father initially broke things off with me, said it could never work between us." Diane's eyes grew distant with memory. 6 months later, he returned, told me he'd been a fool, that nothing mattered more than being with me. It was only years later that I discovered he'd been threatened by Gerald, that he'd stepped away to protect my teaching career." Jennifer felt her throat tighten. "Like father, like son." "Perhaps," Diane agreed softly. "But there's a crucial difference. Your father came back after 6 months. Jackson waited 12 years. That's a long time to harbor feelings, Jennifer. People change. The boy you loved might not be the man who returned." "I know that, Mom." Jennifer stood and began pacing the small kitchen. "But what about all this money? The trust for a bakery, your medical care? We can't just ignore that." "We can if it comes with strings attached," Diane said firmly. "I won't have you trading your heart for financial security. And if it doesn't? If Jackson truly just wants to right a wrong?" Diane studied her daughter carefully. "Do you still have feelings for him after all this time?" Jennifer stopped pacing. "I don't know. Maybe, or maybe I'm just curious about what might have been. She ran a hand through her hair in frustration. Everything's happening so fast. Yesterday he was just a painful memory. Today he's offering answers and solutions to problems I've been fighting alone for years. Then perhaps you need more information before you decide anything, Diane suggested reasonably. Talk to him again, but this time, go in with your eyes open. The upscale bar of the Ritz-Carlton was crowded with after-work professionals when Jennifer arrived the following evening. She spotted Jackson immediately, sitting alone at a corner table, checking his watch. He looked up as she approached, his face lighting with relief. "You came," he said, standing to greet her. "I wasn't sure you would after dumping so much on you yesterday." Jennifer slid into the chair across from him. "I had a long talk with my mother." "And?" Jackson asked, his expression carefully neutral. "She confirmed parts of your story. She knew about the family connection, but not about the investments." Jennifer met his gaze directly. "She also told me something interesting about my father making the same choice you did, choosing to leave to protect someone they loved." Jackson nodded slowly. "Your father was braver than I was. He found his way back to your mother much sooner." "Why did it take you so long, Jackson?" Jennifer asked the question that had been burning in her since yesterday. "Once you were financially independent, free of your father's control, why wait?" Jackson signaled a server and ordered drinks before responding. "The simple answer? Fear." He looked at her with raw honesty. "By the time I had established my first successful architecture firm at 25, you were engaged to Ryan. You seemed happy, settled. I told myself I had no right to disrupt the life you'd built. And the complicated answer? I needed to be certain I could protect you from my father. It wasn't enough to be successful. I needed to be more powerful than he was, to ensure he could never threaten you again." Jackson's eyes hardened. That took time. Building a financial empire that could withstand anything he might throw at it, constructing a network of allies that could neutralize his influence. The server returned with their drinks, and Jennifer took a grateful sip of her wine. "So all of this," she gestured vaguely, "the company, the billions, it was all about getting back at your father? About proving something to him?" "Not proving. Protecting," Jackson corrected. "Everything I've built has been with one purpose, to create a fortress so strong that no one, not my father, not the Crawfords, not anyone, could ever come between us again." "That's," Jennifer struggled for words, "that's either the most romantic or the most disturbing thing I've ever heard." A hint of a smile crossed Jackson's face. "Maybe it's both. I won't pretend I made all the right choices, Jen, but every decision, every sacrifice led me back to you." Before Jennifer could respond, a commotion at the bar drew their attention. A group of well-dressed men had entered, laughing loudly. One of them spotted Jackson and waved enthusiastically before heading their way. "Bennett, I thought that was you," the man exclaimed, clapping Jackson on the shoulder. "Heard about the Crawford deal. Bold move, my friend, very bold." Jackson's expression remained pleasant, but Jennifer noticed a sudden tension in his posture. "Thanks, Richard. Jennifer, this is Richard Townsend, one of our investors." "Richard?" Jennifer Hayes, an old friend. Richard's eyes flickered over Jennifer with casual assessment. "Pleasure. Don't let me interrupt your catching up." He winked unsubtly at Jackson. "But the team's celebrating the Crawford acquisition tonight, if you want to join us later." "I'll pass, thanks," Jackson replied smoothly. "Give everyone my regards." After Richard rejoined his group, Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "Crawford acquisition? As in Heather Crawford's family?" Jackson shifted uncomfortably. "It's not what it sounds like." "Then what is it?" Jennifer pressed. "I've been buying up Crawford Holdings for the past 5 years," Jackson admitted. "Systematically, quietly. Last week I completed the acquisition of their flagship development company." Jennifer stared at him. "You destroyed the company of the family your father wanted you to marry into?" "Not destroyed, transformed," Jackson corrected. "The Crawford business model was outdated, focused on luxury developments that displaced existing communities. I've redirected their resources toward affordable housing and mixed-income neighborhoods." "Still sounds like revenge to me," Jennifer observed. "Business strategy," Jackson countered, though a flash of something in his eyes suggested she wasn't entirely wrong. "The acquisition puts Bennett Architectural Innovations in a position to reshape urban development across the Northeast, including," he leaned forward, "creating spaces for small businesses priced out of gentrifying neighborhoods. Businesses like bakeries." Jennifer felt her pulse quicken. "You're manipulating me. I'm offering you an opportunity." Jackson replied. "The money in that trust is yours regardless of what you decide about me. Your mother's investments are legally hers, with no strings attached. But yes, I'd be lying if I said I didn't hope that knowing what I've built, what we could build together, might influence your feelings." Jennifer took another sip of wine, studying him over the rim of her glass. "Tell me about Heather Crawford." Jackson blinked, surprised by the change in direction. "What about her? Did you date her like your father wanted? Marry her?" "No," Jackson replied firmly. "I never married anyone." "But you dated her," Jennifer persisted, sensing there was more to the story. Jackson sighed. "Briefly, in my early 20s. My father was still controlling most of my trust fund. I needed to play along until I could access my inheritance fully." "Were you in love with her?" The question was out before Jennifer could stop it. "No." Jackson's response was immediate and definitive. "I've only loved one person, Jen. That's never changed." The intensity of his gaze made her look away. 12 years is a long time to carry a torch. "It wasn't just a torch," Jackson said quietly. "It was a promise. One I intend to keep if you'll let me." Jennifer's phone buzzed with a text from Katie, her mother's caregiver. "Need to leave early tonight. Emergency with my son. Sorry for short notice." Reality crashed back in. "I have to go," Jennifer said, gathering her purse. "My mother's caregiver has an emergency." Jackson stood immediately. "Let me drive you." "That's not necessary," Jennifer began, but he was already signaling for the check. "Please, Jen, let me help. Just a ride home, nothing more." 20 minutes later, they pulled up in front of Jennifer's modest townhouse in Jackson's sleek Audi. Before she could thank him and exit, Jackson's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "I need to take this. It's my project manager in Boston." He answered the call, his expression growing more concerned as he listened. "When?" he asked sharply. "And you're certain it was deliberate?" "Yes. Double the security immediately. I'll be there first thing tomorrow." He ended the call and turned to Jennifer, his face grim. "I'm sorry, but there's an emergency I need to address." "What happened?" Jennifer asked, concerned by his expression. "Someone broke into our Boston development site and sabotaged some equipment. Second incident this month." His jaw tightened. "Likely connected to the Crawford acquisition. Some people aren't happy about the direction I'm taking the company." "That sounds dangerous, Jackson." "It's just business tactics," he said dismissively. "Nothing I haven't dealt with before." He hesitated. "I have to fly to Boston tonight, but I'd like to continue our conversation when I return." "There's still so much I need to tell you." Jennifer found herself nodding. "Okay, but I need time to think about everything. This is all overwhelming." "I understand." Jackson reached across the console and gently took her hand. "Thank you for listening, for giving me a chance to explain. It's more than I probably deserve." As Jennifer watched him drive away, conflicting emotions churned inside her. The boy she had loved had become a man of power and wealth who claimed to have built an empire for her sake. It was flattering, intoxicating, and more than a little frightening. Inside, she found Katie preparing to leave and her mother dozing in her favorite chair. After settling Katie's emergency childcare situation with an advance on next week's pay, Jennifer sat beside her mother, gently waking her. "How was your date?" Diane asked sleepily. "It wasn't a date, Mom, just a conversation." Jennifer sighed. "Jackson's building something big, bigger than I could have imagined, and he says it's all been for me to protect us from his father." Diane fully awakened at this. "Gerald Bennett was a manipulative man, Jennifer. His son grew up learning those same tactics." "You think Jackson is manipulating me?" Jennifer asked, troubled. "I think 12 years is a very long time to be planning a reunion," Diane replied carefully, "and I find it convenient that he reappears just as our financial situation is most desperate." Jennifer hadn't thought of it that way. "You think he knew about your cancer, about our struggles? He admitted to keeping tabs on you," Diane pointed out. "How closely has he been watching? And why wait until now to reveal himself?" Before Jennifer could respond, her phone chimed with an email notification. The sender was unfamiliar. Peace Rawford, @crawfordenterprises.com. The subject line made her breath catch. "The truth about Jackson Bennett." Against her better judgment, Jennifer opened the email. "Ms. Hayes, you don't know me, but I know about you. Jackson Bennett has not been honest about his motives or his past. Before you trust him with your future, you should know what he's really capable of. Meet me tomorrow at noon. Crawford Building lobby. Come alone. Patricia Crawford. Patricia Crawford, the woman her father was supposed to marry. The aunt of the woman Jackson was supposed to marry. What truth could she possibly have about Jackson that he hadn't already revealed? Jennifer stared at her phone, feeling as though she stood at a crossroads. Trust the man who claimed to have never stopped loving her, or meet with a stranger from the family he had systematically targeted. Neither option felt entirely safe. "What is it?" Diane asked, noticing her daughter's troubled expression. Jennifer hesitated only briefly before showing her mother the email. Diane read it twice, her lips thinning. "You can't possibly be considering meeting this woman," Diane said firmly. "It could be dangerous. It's in a public place, Mom, and what if there's more to Jackson's story? What if he's not being completely truthful? And what if this is a trap set by people who have a vested interest in stopping whatever Jackson is planning?" Diane countered. "Patricia Crawford lost everything when your father chose me over her. Now her family's company is being taken over by Jackson. You don't think she might harbor some resentment?" Jennifer knew her mother had a point, but curiosity and doubt had already taken root. "I'll be careful. But I need to know, Mom. I need all the facts before I decide anything about Jackson, about the money, about our future." Diane squeezed her daughter's hand. "Just promise me you won't go alone." "I promise," Jennifer agreed, already wondering who she could trust to accompany her to such a strange meeting. As she helped her mother to bed, her mind raced with possibilities. What secret could Patricia Crawford possibly reveal about Jackson Bennett? And would it change everything she was beginning to feel for him all over again? The Crawford Building's marble lobby bustled with midday activity as Jennifer approached the central fountain, her heart racing. Despite her promise to her mother, she had come alone, though not without precautions. She'd texted her location to Marcia from Peterson's with instructions to call the police if she didn't check in within an hour. "Ms. Hayes?" Jennifer turned to find a striking woman in her 50s approaching. With her tailored charcoal suit and silver-streaked dark hair, Patricia Crawford exuded the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention. Jennifer immediately noticed the resemblance to Heather Crawford, the same aristocratic features, though tempered by age, and what appeared to be a permanent wariness in her eyes. "Thank you for meeting me," Patricia said, extending a manicured hand. "I suggest we speak somewhere more private. My office is on the 22nd floor. Jennifer hesitated. "I'd prefer to stay in public if you don't mind." Patricia's lips curved in what might have been respect. Cautious. "Good. The cafe across the atrium, then. Still public, but more conducive to our discussion." Minutes later, they were seated in a corner booth, 2 untouched coffees between them. Patricia studied Jennifer with unsettling intensity. "You look like your father," she finally said. "He had that same determined expression when he stood up to Gerald Bennett all those years ago." Jennifer straightened. "You knew my father well?" "We were engaged to be married," Patricia replied matter-of-factly. "Until he met your mother and discovered what actual love felt like." Her tone held no bitterness, only a strange resignation. "I didn't begrudge him his happiness. I envied it." "Is that why you wanted to meet? To talk about my parents?" Jennifer asked, confused. "No." Patricia reached into her briefcase and withdrew a manila folder. "I'm here because history is repeating itself, and you deserve to know exactly what you're walking into with Jackson Bennett." She slid the folder across the table. Inside, Jennifer found newspaper clippings, photographs, and legal documents spanning the past decade. Headlines jumped out at her. "Bennett Innovations acquires struggling Harper Designs." "Crawford Development loses key Boston contract to Bennett." "Harper suicide shocks architectural community." "What is this?" Jennifer asked, a sense of dread building as she examined the materials. "Jackson's path to power," Patricia replied coldly. "Not the romantic revenge quest he's likely painted for you, but a systematic destruction of anyone who stood in his way, including Thomas Harper, a brilliant young architect who made the mistake of dating Heather after she and Jackson broke up." Jennifer's fingers stilled on a photograph of a handsome young man. "What happened to him?" "Jackson used his growing influence to block Harper's projects, poach his clients, and eventually force him to sell his struggling firm to Bennett Innovations at a fraction of its worth." Patricia's voice hardened. 6 months later, Harper jumped from his apartment balcony. The official ruling was suicide, but many of us wondered if he was pushed, figuratively Or literally? Jennifer's stomach churned. You're suggesting Jackson was responsible for this man's death? That's a serious accusation. I'm suggesting Jackson Bennett will stop at nothing to get what he wants. Patricia leaned forward. His obsession with destroying the Crawfords went far beyond business. He dated my niece briefly, gained access to family secrets, then used that information to systematically dismantle everything we'd built over generations. That's not how Jackson described it, Jennifer countered, though doubt crept into her voice. I'm sure it wasn't. Patricia's smile was brittle. Did he tell you about the affordable housing initiative we had already launched before his transformation of our company, or how his takeover actually stalled those projects for 2 years while families waited for homes? Jennifer felt increasingly unsettled. Why are you telling me this? What do you want? To warn you. Patricia's expression softened slightly. Gerald Bennett warped his son in ways that may not be fixable. Jackson's obsession with you, and yes, we've known about it for years, has driven every decision he's made. That kind of single-minded fixation isn't love, Ms. Hayes. It's possession. You make him sound like some kind of monster, Jennifer said shakily. Not a monster, a product of his upbringing, Patricia corrected. Gerald Bennett raised his son to believe that power was the only protection against vulnerability, that control was synonymous with love. Jackson may genuinely believe everything he's done has been for you, but ask yourself, did you ever want someone to destroy lives in your name? Before Jennifer could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message from Jackson. Back from Boston early. Need to see you. It's urgent. Patricia noticed Jennifer's reaction to the message. He knows you're here, doesn't he? She asked quietly. I didn't tell him, Jennifer replied, confused. Patricia sighed, suddenly looking tired. Of course you didn't. But Jackson has eyes everywhere. He's probably had you watched since the moment you reconnected. She gathered her belongings. My purpose was to give you information, not to tell you what to do with it. The choice is yours, but make it with open eyes. As Patricia stood to leave, she hesitated. One last thing. The Crawford family wasn't always what it became under my brother's leadership. We started as builders of homes for working families, not luxury developments for the elite. If Jackson truly intends to return the company to those roots, perhaps some good can come from all this destruction. She placed a business card on the table. If you ever need anything, advice, help, a friendly ear, I'm available. Jennifer remained at the cafe long after Patricia departed, examining the documents and struggling with conflicting emotions. The Jackson described in these materials was calculating, ruthless, even vindictive. A far cry from the earnest boy she had loved, or the passionate man who claimed to have never stopped loving her. Yet she couldn't dismiss everything he had told her. The family connections, the investments in her name, her mother's holdings, those had proven true. Finally, she texted Jackson back. My place, 7 p.m. Jennifer spent the afternoon with her mother, sharing Patricia Crawford's revelations and sorting through her confused feelings. By the time Jackson's car pulled up outside their townhouse that evening, she had reached a decision, though not one without trepidation. She met him at the door, noting immediately the tension in his shoulders, the worried crease between his brows. Thank you for seeing me, he said, stepping inside. Especially after your meeting with Patricia Crawford. Jennifer crossed her arms. So you were having me followed? Not exactly. Jackson ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture that still made her heart twist. The Crawford building has security cameras in the lobby. I have a friend in their IT department who recognized you from a photograph in my office and alerted me. That doesn't make it better, Jackson, Jennifer said sharply. I know. I'm sorry. His apology seemed genuine. But when I heard you were meeting with Patricia, I was concerned. The Crawfords blame me for a lot of things. Some justified, some not. Like Thomas Harper's suicide? Jennifer asked bluntly. Jackson flinched as if she'd struck him. She told you about Tom. It wasn't a question. He moved to the window, looking out at the darkening street. I didn't cause his death, Jennifer. But I can't say I'm blameless either. Tell me what happened. The truth, Jackson. All of it. He turned to face her, his expression raw with what appeared to be genuine regret. After my father forced our separation, I was broken, angry. When I finally gained some independence in college, I started building my company with a singular focus, gaining enough power that no one could control me again. And Heather Crawford, Jennifer prompted. My father still expected me to fulfill my obligation to the Crawford alliance. I dated Heather briefly, trying to buy time until I could access my full inheritance. His expression darkened. When I finally broke things off, she began seeing Tom Harper almost immediately, a talented architect who had previously lost several major contracts to my firm. You targeted his business. Yes, Jackson admitted. I convinced myself it was justified, that he was only with Heather as a business move against me. I used every advantage to undermine his company, eventually forcing him to sell to me. And then he killed himself, Jennifer said quietly. Jackson's face contorted with pain. 6 months later. By then I'd discovered he genuinely loved Heather, that their relationship wasn't about business or revenge at all. He swallowed hard. After his death, I found letters he'd written to her, passionate, sincere declarations of love that reminded me of how I felt about you. It was a wake-up call. So you changed your approach, became the billionaire philanthropist. I tried to channel my resources into something positive, Jackson said. Affordable housing, community development, sustainability initiatives, things that would make a difference, things I thought would have made you proud. While still systematically destroying the Crawford family business, Jennifer pointed out. Yes, Jackson acknowledged, without attempting to justify it. My father's death should have ended that vendetta. Instead, I accelerated it, finalizing the acquisition because I finally felt free to come back to you, and I wanted to close that chapter completely. Jennifer studied him, the man who had built an empire, destroyed lives, and reshaped an industry, all while claiming to love her. Did you ever consider that I might not want any of this? That the boy I loved at 17 wanted to create, not destroy? Every day, Jackson said softly. But I couldn't find my way back to that boy, not without you. He took a hesitant step toward her. I've made terrible mistakes, Jen. I won't deny that or try to excuse them, but seeing you again, being near you, I feel like maybe I can find my way back to who I was supposed to be, who we were supposed to be. Jennifer felt tears welling in her eyes. You can't pin your redemption on me, Jackson. That's not fair. You're right. He nodded, blinking back his own tears. And I won't. Whether you want me in your life or not, I'm already taking steps to make amends, starting with the Harper Foundation for Young Architects that I established last year. You didn't mention that before. Because it doesn't erase what I did, Jackson said simply. Nothing can bring Tom back or undo the pain I caused. But I can try to honor his talent by supporting others like him. A soft voice from the doorway interrupted them. Jennifer, is everything all right? Diane Hayes stood there, her frail form supported by a walking cane, yet her eyes sharp as they assessed Jackson. Mrs. Hayes, Jackson said, straightening, it's good to see you again. Diane's expression remained neutral. Is it? The last time we saw each other, you were breaking my daughter's heart. Mom, Jennifer began, but Jackson gently cut her off. She's right, he said, and I owe you both an apology that's 12 years overdue. He moved toward Diane, stopping a respectful distance away. I'm sorry for the pain I caused your family. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to stand up to my father the way Jennifer's father did. Diane studied him for a long moment. Gerald Bennett was a formidable opponent. My husband paid a high price for defying him. I know, Jackson acknowledged. He lost his position in the Bennett firm, his social standing, his inheritance, but he gained something far more valuable. He glanced at Jennifer. A love that was real, a family built on mutual respect rather than obligation and control. Something in Diane's expression shifted. You sound like your mother. She understood the difference. You knew my mother? Jackson asked, surprised. We met a few times, years ago, Diane replied. At your grandfather's funeral, and once when she came to see your father at our wedding reception. She told me she envied my courage to choose love over security. A sad smile touched Diane's lips. I always thought she was the brave one, staying in a loveless marriage to protect her son. Jennifer watched this exchange with growing understanding. The tangled history between their families had shaped all their lives in ways she was only beginning to comprehend. What happens now? She finally asked, drawing both their attention. Jackson turned to her, his expression open and vulnerable. That depends on you, Jen. The trust fund for your bakery, your mother's investments. Those are yours regardless. I've already had the papers drawn up to transfer everything into your names, no conditions attached. And us? Jennifer asked quietly. What are you hoping for there? A second chance, he replied simply. Not to pick up where we left off, we're different people now, but a chance to get to know each other again, to see if there's still something worth building between us. Diane cleared her throat. I think I'll give you two some privacy. Jackson, before I go, did you know your mother left me a letter before she died? Jackson's surprise was evident. No, I didn't. She asked me to look after you if you ever found your way back to Jennifer, to remind you that the Bennett legacy isn't about wealth or power, but about creating spaces where love can flourish. Diane's eyes held his steadily. Don't forget that legacy again. With that, she turned and slowly made her way back to her bedroom, leaving Jennifer and Jackson alone once more. I don't know if I can trust you, Jennifer admitted after a moment of silence. The boy I loved and the man you've become seem worlds apart. I understand, Jackson said. Trust has to be earned. I'd like the chance to earn yours again, one day at a time. And if I say no, if I take the money for my mother's care and my bakery, but ask you to leave us alone, pain flashed across his face, but he nodded. Then I'll respect your decision. The funds are yours either way. I won't use money to manipulate you the way my father used it to control me. Jennifer took a deep breath, making her decision. I need time, Jackson. Not years, but time. To process everything, to get my mother's treatment on track, to think about what I really want. Of course, he agreed immediately. Take all the time you need. But, Jennifer continued, feeling her way carefully through her conflicted emotions, I'm not saying no to that second chance, just not yet. Hope brightened his eyes. I can work with not yet. In the meantime, Jennifer said, I'd like to see the plans for this Harper Foundation and the affordable housing projects. I want to understand the man you've become. All of him, not just the parts you think will please me. Jackson's smile was tentative but genuine. I'd like that. And perhaps you could tell me about your bakery ideas. The dream you had to put on hold. I'd like that too. Jennifer found herself smiling back. 6 months later, Jennifer adjusted the grand opening banner hanging above the door of Sweet Foundation's bakery, the morning sunlight catching on the simple engagement ring on her left hand. The modest storefront on the ground floor of a Bennett Innovations mixed-income housing development had been transformed into a warm, inviting space filled with the aroma of fresh bread and pastries. Behind her, Diane supervised the arrangement of tables and chairs. Her health markedly improved after specialized treatment at the country's leading cancer center. The experimental therapy, funded by her long-hidden investments, had halted the disease's progression and restored much of her energy. Nervous? Asked a familiar voice as Jackson approached, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers, just like the ones he'd picked for her on their first date at 17. Terrified, Jennifer admitted with a laugh. But the good kind of terrified. The residents are already lining up, he noted, nodding toward the small crowd gathering on the sidewalk. Word has spread about your test batches. Jennifer leaned into him briefly, drawing strength from his solid presence. The past 6 months had been a journey of rediscovery for both of them. She had watched Jackson work to make amends for his past actions, redirecting his considerable resources and influence toward genuine community building. And he had supported her unconditionally as she developed her bakery concept, offering advice when asked but never attempting to control the process. Their relationship had evolved slowly, deliberately, built on honesty and shared purpose rather than the desperate intensity of their teenage love or the obsessive fixation of Jackson's intervening years. The engagement was recent, and the wedding still a year away, but Jennifer no longer doubted the foundation they were creating together. Did you see today's business section? Jackson asked, handing her the newspaper he carried tucked under his arm. Jennifer scanned the headline, Crawford Bennett Initiative Launches Housing Fund. The accompanying photograph showed Jackson shaking hands with Patricia Crawford, both looking cautiously optimistic. I still can't believe she agreed to work with you, Jennifer marveled. Turns out we share more common ground than either of us realized, Jackson replied. Once I stopped trying to destroy her family's legacy and started honoring it instead, Patricia proved to be a valuable ally. And Heather? Jennifer couldn't help asking. The lingering tension between Jackson and his former almost fiancée had been a complicated thread in their story. Still keeping her distance, but she's agreed to join the Harper Foundation board next year. Jackson's expression grew thoughtful. Some wounds take longer to heal, but it's a start. Diane approached, adjusting her new wig, a stylish bob that made her look years younger. The mayor just pulled up outside. "Are we ready to make this official?" Jennifer looked around at the bakery she had dreamed of for so long, a space that would provide both artisanal baked goods to paying customers and job training to residents from the affordable housing units above. A business built on her talent and vision, but made possible by the tangled history of two families whose paths had finally converged in harmony rather than conflict. "We're ready," she said confidently, reaching for Jackson's hand as they prepared to welcome their first customers. As she cut the ribbon and the crowd applauded, Jennifer caught sight of a familiar photograph framed on the wall behind the counter. Two teenagers by a lake, arms around each other, faces alight with possibilities. Beside it hung a newer image, Jennifer and Jackson at the groundbreaking for the Harper Community Arts Center, their expressions more tempered by experience, but no less hopeful. Some promises took longer to keep than others. Some paths diverged before finding their way back together, and sometimes, Jennifer reflected, as she welcomed the community into her bakery, the most unexpected encounters could lead to the most beautiful beginnings.